Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Lately, the air has been pretty thick with anticipation, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly around those high-level talks between Russia and Ukraine, and, well, culminating in that much-talked-about summit in Alaska.
Yeah, that summit generated a lot of headlines.
There was this flicker of hope, a
Yeah.
sense that maybe, just maybe, a corner could be turned.
Mm.
Yet the reality that's emerged since then is quite a stark contrast to those initial expectations.
It really is. Things cooled off fast.
So our core mission today is to really try and understand why these crucial discussions aimed squarely at peace are proving so incredibly difficult and, frankly, pretty frustrating.
Yeah. Frustrating is a good word for it.
We're talking about a situation where the public story often seems, well, quite different from what's actually happening on the ground diplomatically.
Precisely. And in this deep dive, we'll be peeling back some of those layers, looking at the conflicting statements, the unspoken strategies.
The hidden agendas.
Maybe. And definitely the fundamental disagreements that are actively stalling any genuine progress.
Right.
We're drawing heavily today on a recent, quite sharp analysis by De Telegraph. It gives us some really incisive insights into these complex dynamics.
Okay, good. Our goal then is to cut through all that noise, all the confusion, try to understand the key players' genuine positions.
We can nail those down.
And extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from these sources. So by the end of this, you should walk away not just informed, but with a deeper, more nuanced understanding of this incredibly intricate situation.
That's the plan.
All right, let's dig in.
Okay.
We should probably start by revisiting that initial swell of optimism around the Alaska summit. Remember, there were voices, some quite prominent, suggesting that Donald Trump was on the good path to brokering a significant deal between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, that narrative was definitely pushed.
And it wasn't just idle speculation, was it? There seemed to be deliberate efforts to cultivate this sense of possibility.
Oh, absolutely. But, as our source points out, on the other side, you had what they aptly called the cynical people.
Right. The skeptics.
Exactly. These were the observers who, right from the very beginning, were basically predicting that it's just not going to happen.
They saw it as more performative?
Largely, yes. They view the entire thing with a heavy dose of skepticism. Even that informal Friday deadline for some kind of breakthrough.
Oh, yeah, I remember that being floated.
It wasn't really taken seriously by those paying close attention to the underlying realities. What this really highlights is that immediate gap between public hope and, let's say, expert skepticism.
And then almost immediately after the summit, we started seeing reports, Russia making what were described as retreating movements from the whole idea of direct talks.
Yeah, that happened quickly.
And these weren't just whispers, right? These statements came directly from the Kremlin itself.
That's right, official channels.
So it makes you wonder, given that immediate retreat, were these talks ever genuinely on to begin with? Or was a different message being sent through this whole public dance?
Well, that takes us straight to the heart of the confusion, doesn't it? Which is these starkly conflicting accounts coming from both sides.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What was the Kremlin saying?
The Kremlin's position, stated quite firmly, was essentially, there was never an agreement that we would sit down with Zelensky, period.
No direct talks agreed upon.
That's what they claimed. They clarified that any discussions in Alaska were solely about future talks, talks with higher representatives, not an immediate direct meeting with the Ukrainian president. And the key insight here, according to the analysis, is that these likely weren't accidental miscommunications. It points towards a deliberate strategy by Russia.
To do what? Manage expectations?
Exactly. Manage expectations downward, control the narrative, and basically frame any outcome, or lack thereof, as sticking to their diplomatic stance.
Okay. And in vivid contrast to that, you had Trump's very public, very pronounced efforts.
Very visible.
He was actively claiming Putin was open to these talks, promising he'd personally arrange it.
Right, taking ownership.
We even saw him, didn't we, pausing significant meetings with European leaders at the White House for a 40-minute call with Putin, seemingly to push this exact meeting forward.
Yeah, that was quite something.
He was undeniably projecting an image of, active engagement being the deal maker.
It's abundantly clear, as the source underscores, that a distinct game is being played here. By both sides, arguably.
How so?
Well, take the Kremlin, for instance. They offered that subtle prickle, a deliberate jab by suggesting Zelensky could visit Moscow.
Which is obviously impossible.
Completely impossible. They knew full well that such a visit would be utterly untenable for Zelensky, politically, symbolically. It would be seen as an insult, not an olive branch.
So it wasn't a real invitation.
Not at all. It was a tactical maneuver. It's not just about refusing talks. It's a strategic play designed to publicly highlight the impossibility of direct negotiation on their terms, making a show of openness while slamming the door shut.
So as you, the listener, try to make sense of this, how do we process such drastically different interpretations of what was agreed or even just discussed?
It's like watching two different movies, isn't it?
It really is. Like, they attended different meetings, and it's precisely this radical divergence that leads us straight to what our source describes as a truly bizarre and insane core problem.
Yeah, that wording is strong, but it reflects the issue.
A problem that makes resolution so incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And that problem is Russia's demand for a veto position over any security guarantees given to Kyiv.
Right. Let that sink in.
Think about the audacity of that for a moment. A nation at war demanding a say in the security arrangements designed specifically to protect its adversary.
From a conventional diplomatic standpoint, it's fundamentally absurd.
Totally. But our source suggests there's a deeper, more calculated purpose behind it. It's not just random absurdity.
You've hit on a crucial point there.
Right.
While it seems absurd on the surface, the source suggests this isn't just some nonsensical demand thrown out there.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these security guarantees, they're expected to come primarily from Europe, right?
Yeah.
Potentially involving boots on the ground, though that remains quite vague.
Still very unclear, yeah.
While the U.S. would likely coordinate, maybe supply weapons, but probably not direct troop involvement.
Okay.
So Russia stepping in, claiming they must approve who provides security guarantees against themselves. It's not really about their own security in that sense.
What is it about, then?
It looks like a calculated move to prevent Ukraine's true sovereignty, to ensure it remains a perpetually destabilized buffer zone. It effectively denies any real path for Kyiv to genuinely integrate with Western security structures.
So it's a demand for control, fundamentally.
Exactly. Control, not safety.
And the source makes it pretty clear, doesn't it, that Russia uses this demand to effectively train, or as we'd probably say, to intentionally delay and drag out the negotiations.
Constantly. They keep raising new issues, creating fresh problems, new complications for everyone else to untangle.
It's a classic stalling tactic.
Textbook.
Yeah.
But when you insist on a veto over your opponent's security against you, it fundamentally makes any genuine resolution,
well,
unsolvable.
It's a deadlock by design.
Seems that way. Which brings us to an analysis of Trump's approach in all this.
Okay.
The prevailing perception, according to our source, is that he never really puts the knife to Putin's throat. That's the phrase used. Meaning threats of sanctions, which are frequently mentioned sort of in the offing. They seem to consistently go nowhere.
They don't get implemented.
Rarely, or not with full force, despite the strong rhetoric. And the striking thing here is that this pattern of unfulfilled threats, it actually undermines his own image as a strong leader who gets things done.
Interesting point.
It suggests either a deeper calculation we're not seeing, or maybe just a lack of interest in aggressive economic warfare in this specific case.
And the source highlights a very specific, powerful alternative action Trump could take, but hasn't, right?
That's right. He could state, unequivocally, something like, if you don't agree to reasonable terms, I will give these advanced weapons to Ukraine with the full authority to use them however they see fit.
That would be a concrete, high-stakes consequence, a lever he hasn't pulled, at least based on this analysis.
Exactly, which creates this fascinating contradiction.
How so?
Well, Trump prides himself on being this powerful leader, someone Putin supposedly respects and listens to.
Right, that's the image.
Yet in this specific context, his actions, or lack thereof, don't quite align with that self-portrayed image.
So it makes you ask, is it strategic posturing, maybe for a domestic audience? Or does it signal a different, perhaps unstated priority for his administration regarding this conflict?
It's a key question.
Is all of this just about power politics and strategic posturing from all sides? Or is there something else at play here that's preventing any real shift in this very entrenched dynamic?
Well, a key takeaway here is that there are clearly two critical levers that could be used to apply significant pressure on Russia. Yet they remain largely untapped.
Okay, what are they?
First, obviously, just delivering a greater quantity of more powerful, longer-range weapons to Kyiv. That's straightforward military aid.
More and better weapons.
Right. But second, and maybe crucially, implementing what are known as secondary sanctions.
Explain those briefly.
Sure. These aren't just sanctions on Russia directly. They're sanctions on other countries, like China and India are often mentioned, that continued to do significant trade, particularly in oil, with Moscow.
Ah, so you target Russia's trading partners.
Exactly. It effectively forces those third-party nations to choose. Keep doing business with Russia, or maintain your access to the much larger, more lucrative Western markets. It's a very potent economic weapon.
But politically tricky to implement, I imagine.
Very tricky, but potent.
And that gets right to the core economic reality, doesn't it? Russia's economy, despite all those early predictions of collapse, it continues to function. And a massive part of that resilience comes from these oil revenues still flowing, particularly to India and China.
Absolutely. That's a lifeline.
So the source suggests if you could genuinely implement those secondary sanctions and really put the squeeze on those secondary markets,
you could apply substantial pressure, maybe even decisive pressure.
That's a very clear point from the analysis.
Indeed. And it's worth noting that Putin seems to be actively gambling on Europe being too divided to act decisively on things like this, or even on direct military aid.
How so?
We saw that anonymous Bloomberg report suggesting 10 European countries might be willing to send troops.
Right, that caused a stir.
But it was almost immediately countered by explicit, firm refusals from major players like the UK and Germany. No boots on the ground.
So that perceived division, or maybe actual division,
it allows Putin to continually push boundaries without facing a truly unified, overwhelming response from Europe.
And our source is also quite critical of some of the lazy options being floated, like just defending Ukraine's airspace or its seas.
Yeah, the analysis isn't impressed with those.
While they might sound helpful, they are geographically pretty far removed from the actual front lines where the brutal fighting is happening. Why does the source call them lazy? Is it just the distance?
It's more than just distance. The source implies these options are lazy because they fundamentally fail to address the primary military challenge on the ground.
Which is?
Ukraine's ability to hold territory, to reclaim territory. Defending airspace or seas, while important in itself, doesn't put boots on the ground where they are, frankly, desperately needed to counter Russian advances.
So it's indirect support versus direct intervention where it matters most?
Precisely. And the grim truth, highlighted by the analysis, is that no major European country seems willing to commit troops directly to that intense frontline fighting. And that's the core strategic impediment from their side.
This brings us back, then, to what might be at the core of Trump's negotiation style, and also those broader fears in Europe. Even before Alaska, a key concern in Europe was that Trump's primary goal isn't necessarily a lasting fair peace.
Right.
But maybe just to quickly wrap up the war, declare victory or peace, then pivot U.S. focus firmly to Asia.
And potentially make Europe pay for American weapons delivered during the conflict.
It's that transactional approach that has worried allies for a while now, hasn't it? And it shapes how they react to his diplomatic moves.
Absolutely. And it circles back to that pattern we've seen before regarding Trump's negotiation style. His tendency, perhaps, to hear what he wants to hear.
Leading to very different versions of the same meeting.
Exactly. It often leads to drastically different interpretations after high-level meetings. After almost every major summit, you get his account, and then you get the other party's account, and they often don't fully align.
Which raises that big question about how effective that style can ultimately be for achieving real, lasting resolutions, especially in these incredibly complex international conflicts.
That's a valid question.
Indeed. And building on that, there's that intriguing anecdote from anonymous sources about the Alaska talks themselves.
Ah, yes. The Donetsk part.
Putin reportedly insisted so long, so hard on Russia gaining full control of Donetsk that Trump allegedly threatened to just walk out, saying something like, if you continue with this, I'll stop, I'll walk away.
Right.
Now, you could interpret that as Trump drawing a clear boundary for Putin, showing strength.
That's one interpretation, yes.
However, it also highlights a profound potential for misrepresentation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Both sides could easily be crafting and leaking these specific details to their advantage, selectively lying, or at least emphasizing certain points about what was truly discussed.
To shape the narrative back home, project strength, or signal resolve, it makes figuring out the ground truth in high-stakes diplomacy incredibly challenging for observers.
Extremely challenging. So we're left with a pretty clear conclusion from our sources. This intricate, game-conflicting narratives, strategic delays, a continued lack of truly decisive action from all sides.
It's likely to just continue.
For days, weeks, Months. That's the assessment. It keeps the entire situation locked in this incredibly frustrating stalemate with no clear off-ramp in sight.
So just to summarize our deep dive today, we've really highlighted the core challenges here, haven't we?
I think so.
These starkly different accounts of what's even being discussed coming from Moscow and Washington.
The veto demand.
Russia's seemingly insurmountable demand for a veto on any security guarantees for Ukraine.
And the hesitations.
And these evident hesitations on multiple fronts in applying the full spectrum of economic and military pressure that could potentially alter the conflict's trajectory.
And it's crucial to see this isn't just, a simple breakdown in communication.
No.
It's presented as a calculated game where deeply entrenched interests and fundamentally clashing interpretations are constantly at play.
Like different rule books.
Exactly. What this really reveals is that both sides seem to be operating from vastly different playbooks. They're not merely misunderstanding each other, they appear to be strategically embracing ambiguity and conflicting narratives.
It just makes genuine progress incredibly difficult.
Almost impossible under current conditions, it seems.
So given these deeply entrenched positions, these conflicting narratives we've discussed, what's the single most impactful lever, do you think, that hasn't really been pulled yet? And maybe more importantly, what would it truly take for any side to genuinely shift their stance and start moving towards a real, lasting resolution?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. We'll leave you with that thought.